Great. We are 1 minute past the hour, so let's kick things off. Welcome, everybody. My name's Matt. I'm one of the technical directors here at NetWoven, and thank you all for joining us. We're going to have, this is our first of 6 in our series on protecting sensitive data with Microsoft Purview. So let's jump in. I know that you guys had a tough choice to make, Ignite or protecting data with NetWoven and information Purview, and you chose correctly. So congratulations, you're at the right session. Real quick, like I mentioned, this is the intro session to a series of 6 webinars with protecting data. So this webinar is all about your setting the stage, introduction. We're going to talk about current landscape in this security space, and then talk through framework, governance and security, and measuring and monitoring your sensitive information. We will quickly do a little introduction. As we're doing these, get familiar with the Teams webinar feature. So we are going to be answering Q&A. As you have questions, drop them in Q&A, and some of our teammates will be able to answer them. So like I mentioned, this is the first of 6. We're going to be talking at a high level just about all that Purview has to offer. So a really broad topic in discovering, protecting, managing all of this sensitive data types. Our speakers today, we have myself, I'm doing the intros. We have David from Microsoft, Neeraj from NetWoven, and Gursimran also from NetWoven. Who is NetWoven? Just real quick, consulting firm based in the Bay Area, but is throughout the world at this point. We do all of these services, consulting, expert staffing, and we even have some products that focus on securing and governance around sensitive information. We hold a lot of accolades. One of the ones that I'm most proud of is our membership in the Microsoft Intelligent Security Association, the MISA program. This is one of the most prestigious accolades you can achieve in the security space at Microsoft. We at NetWoven also have a broad covering of consulting services. Content collaboration, security, modern applications, and AI, just to name a couple of them. And now we will turn it over to Neeraj to discuss the landscape.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Before I get started, I'd like to really ask David from Microsoft to say a few words here, and then we can get right into the meat of the conversation. So David, please go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, so just by the way of introduction, my name is David Castillo. I'm a digital security and compliance specialist here at Microsoft. And as we kind of look through the agenda for today, we really just wanted to simply start off by saying thank you. We know that all of you have busy schedules, and the fact that we're on your calendar for an hour today, we don't take it lightly. And so kind of breaking in and to kick off what inspired this webinar, it's what we're seeing across all industries, and the similar struggle to keep up with the amount of data that's being produced, whether that's from end users, line of business applications, IoT devices, or anything in between. It's difficult to keep up with the data set that's constantly growing. Explosion of data isn't really helped by the fact that the world is becoming much more regulated by the minute. This can be actually extremely overwhelming to keep up with, and probably seems a little bit daunting. Probably is, right? But there is a little bit of hope there. We're paving a process to get rid of the data that we don't need, all in an effort to minimize our attack surface. And that's really the end goal of what we're talking about here today. As it relates to attacks, I would even venture to say that it's not really a matter of if, but a matter of when. And if that is the case, and hopefully we can all agree, we have to be prepared. So we're not labeled as an organization that reacts to threats, but an organization that's proactive and has security and compliance that is part of the company culture. So to tie off here, NetWoven here is in a second, is gonna highlight how organizations can shrink the attack surface how to best protect the data, and then once we have the proper controls in place, how do we prevent it from being either mishandled or even lost? Finally, how do we establish a culture of governing your data and then deleting the data that no longer adds value? So with that said, we'll go ahead and pass it off.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, everyone.
So, as David mentioned about the current security landscape, let's flip the slide here, Matt, and we will talk about the as you know that there is a lot of threats that are out there, and everyone is grappling to struggle to see what they can do or how they can help address them. A lot of work has already been done on the, if you will, the perimeter level. But if you notice, if you kind of go through the stats here, 83% of data security incidents of organizations are experiencing more than one data breach. And total average cost of activities to resolve threats, 15.4 million. Breaches involving data security in the cloud, private, public, or multiple environments, 82%. And then 80% of decision makers purchase one or more products. So there's a lot going on, and plus there are hundreds of products out there to help address your concerns. So with that, would like to, as David mentioned, that there is a lot of data security incidents that are happening anytime, anywhere. Like users fall prey to phishing attacks. We know that users copy file to USB, and I'm sure you have been watching the news in terms of the data exfiltration that has been happening, and users inadvertently share the file copy with a few colleagues. So it's not just about sharing externally; it's also about sharing data internally, and then people leaving with that data. So that is a bigger problem across the board in making, in how data is exfiltrating across, in the organizations. So next slide, please, Matt. So here's some data regulations are, that, as you know, as David mentioned, that there's a lot of regulations out there. Every, couple of days, there's a new regulation from either from a country or from a state. And you want to make sure that as we are protecting data, we are also taking into consideration the, the regulations that are there, are growing by the day. So we want to kind of make sure that's covered, as we prepare our strategy. So what's the risk of not being compliant? Well, there are several risks that we know of. Loss of trust. If the data that you have, internal or customer data, if it gets, if it gets lost, there's a loss of trust. There is reputational damage, and there's obviously fines and financial damage. And last but not the least, there's also competitive advantage damage that happens. So we all are aware of the risk of not being compliant, and we just have to make sure that a proper focus is put in that. And now many tools are available to help solve the problem. In the past, it was difficult. Now the technology was only catching up to the to the risk and to the to the use cases that are there. But today technology has caught up, and you have the opportunity to really develop a solid data security and governance strategy. So now so as we work with companies, many companies ask us that, hey, I know that this is a problem, but how do I address it? Right? And can you help guide, can you help guide us, what to do with it? So why is data security so difficult? It's so difficult because there's so much of data out there, things that you know in an organization, things that you don't know in an organization. And sometimes when people think of data security, they only think of unstructured data like your files. But data security has to spread across structured and unstructured data. So we've got to look at all of these areas, as we prepare your data security strategy. Matt, next slide, please. So as we are working through the data, okay, many times we run with customers and they look at all data as one. And that's actually a fundamental problem when you are defining your data security strategy. So as we work with customers, we try to break the data down into three buckets. There is the highly sensitive data, things that require the most amount of locks to be able to protect. There is the internally restricted data that's available to the internal organization. It has a fewer locks. And then this is all the other data that you have available to do your business, a day-to-day business. Our experience is that if you apply the same rules to all these three types of data, your productivity is going to come to a standstill and those projects will fail. And that's one of the learnings that we have had, as we have gone through working with many customers. So we're going to now talk through that in greater detail. So what are some of the common use cases of sensitive information? Well, you've got research projects, you've got product development, items, you've got customer collaboration, mergers and acquisitions, legal proceedings. When we think of data, we just think of sometimes sensitive data. We sometimes only think of engineering data, but the use cases are way beyond. Within your organization, you've got to make sure that you protect these data, and maybe there is other types of data that are out there to protect. And so as you develop your business case, make sure that all these things are kept in mind. So what's a good framework to help solve your problem, right? So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. The NIST already has a framework called the CIA: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So if we take the CIA framework, what we can do is we can apply typical data security projects follow this framework, where you discover the data that exists, you classify the data to make it easier to manage, store, and secure. You identify and apply the technologies to protect the data through its life cycle, and then you perform appropriate reporting, analytics, and incident management. So that's sort of the framework that we've successfully implemented with customers. And now, in order to apply the technologies, if you sort of take a view of the diagram on the right side, you start with discovery, you do the classification, there's access control, there's encryption, there's incident management, there's DLP. This is sort of the overall, if you will, framework for protecting your data from any exfiltration. Now, all this doesn't have to be implemented at the same time. It can mature over time as you execute your strategy. So we'll cover some of that. Now, in order to cover this, there are multiple. You may need multiple tools, and what we're going to show, in later to the presentation is how something like a Microsoft Purview covers a lot of these things. This is just to continue on the framework. You're going to hear a number of things. This area is maturing, so you'll hear a number of things, in discussion. So number one is data discovery and classification. We talked about that. Discover all your data stores automatically and continuously. So the technology and the tools that you use must be able to discover and classify data. Then you have to do data security posture management, which is visibility into where the sensitive data is, who has access to the data, how it has been used, and what you can do with that security posture. And this is a new category that has been created called the data security posture management. If you search on the web, you'll find lots of good information in there. And along with that, you also have to think about data encryption, what you really want to encrypt versus what you don't want to encrypt. Encryption comes at a very heavy cost. So we've got to make sure that we are able to identify what needs to be protected or encrypted and what doesn't need to be encrypted. So that's the data security posture management. And then you've got the data detection and response. So once you know what the data you're protecting, if there is an incident, you've got to make sure that your data detection and response process is in place to be able to drive things to resolution. So this is sort of like a 360-degree view of how to protect, how to discover, protect data, and to respond to security threats.
Yeah, and that's a great segue into our first poll of the webinar about your organization's current data security maturity. Let me go ahead and launch this poll, and we're kind of curious, at your organization, how are you in this journey right now? Are you new in it? Have you been developing a roadmap but not executing on it? I see a lot of middle of the road, intermediate going on right now, Neeraj.
Right. Well, this
All right.
is a great topic for the for the webinar, and we'll be sharing additional information after the webinar. And you should definitely sign up for the subsequent webinars that we'll be holding, because our assessment is the same, that that a number of companies are in sort of intermediate stages, and they're trying to figure out how to get to the advanced stage. So let's talk about planning. This is the number one item that I hear from customers, or from people I spoke with, that, hey, I know I need to do this. How do I do this? Right. So let's go through to the next slide on the steps that we've found to be very successful, in this space. So basically, we found that a 6-step process that has worked for our customers. So number one is, first and foremost, is recruit your data czar. I often hear this thing from security folks that, hey, our security people know how to do DLP and how to do all the other types of security, but they are not very proficient in doing data security. And should data security be part of the security organization, or should that be part of the data organization? And our view is that you should find someone who knows data security and make that part of the security organization. Number one thing. Second is, it's a complex process. It takes a long time. It's not something that will get done overnight. So, maybe use a security consultant. Companies, we're here, others are there as well. I know who can be your sort of trusted advisors in your journey, because it's going to be a journey. It's not going to be just a one-stop sort of an engagement. The third is to initiate your planning process. In that planning process, you define your company goals. You go through you discuss your discovery. You analyze your discovery process. You see what is in your organization, both in structured and unstructured. All our engagements that we do, senior execs have told us, I didn't know we had this data. I didn't know we had this repository. I didn't know that we were doing this externally. Those are all the things that have to surface. The next one is to select a DSPM product. So you guys are, I'm assuming this is a Purview product, a webinar here. I'm assuming a lot of you already have Purview, in your licensing scheme. If not, reach out to us or reach out to your Microsoft rep. They will gladly tell you. And you have that, figure out how you can maximize the use of that. You conduct proof of concepts. Extremely important to define your use cases in your planning process and do proof of concept, and then execute iteratively. We found this 6-step process to be very valuable. We've executed this with many customers. It usually, it could take anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks, depending on the size of your organization and your maturity. But after that, you get a very good, if you will, execution plan to iteratively execute on your strategy. So once you do that, then, at part of the planning, this is kind of a sample scorecard that we provide to the enterprises. And this has been very telling. So we actually break the data security into the data in motion, data at rest, and data in use. Those are extremely important buckets to know. If you are a product company, you may have some more requirements, but we are able to look at it from this area, from these 3 buckets. Then also the 3 things that we look at: enterprise applications, enterprise repositories, and any digital products that you might have. So enterprise applications are like Microsoft 365. You may have Google Drive. You may, excuse me, those are enterprise repositories. Enterprise applications are more like, you may be using Anaplan, you may be using Dynamics, you may be using Salesforce. Being able to classify those, because the data in those also have to be protected. And then digital products are products that are, you may as a company be providing products to your customers, and we need to make sure that your digital products are covered from a data security perspective. Then the last item is the data classification, which we find missing in a lot of organizations because they have not gone through that exercise. So our process goes through basically looking at this framework and making sure that we are able to do a current state and then recommend a path forward. Once we have done the assessment, the current state, then we kind of provide like a ranking card to our customer. Where what we do is we assess their maturity, that how are they doing on governance. We look at their existing documents or policies and procedures, any automation that happens. We look at data classification, applications, repositories, data protection, encryption. What is their strategy? We look at their DLP. We look at how their data integrations are happening, and if those integrations are protected. And last but not the least, we also look at record retention, which is the last item of making sure that your data is also retired. Sometimes, often your data security has a gap if you don't have the retention in place. So we kind of go through this. This is just a sample to provide what the maturity of that organization might be. And based on this collection, then we are able to recommend a path forward. So hopefully that gives you a good view of how you plan your data security and governance. We've got a lot of content, a lot of material, a lot of experience in working with customers. And feel free to ask any questions. Feel free to reach out to us separately. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to G for Microsoft Purview.
Great. And before we let G on, I just wanted to launch our second poll, which is if you are currently using Purview or another security suite. So we'll launch that, give it a second to collect some responses. We see a lot of people interested in Purview. All right, give it just another 10 seconds, G. Awesome. Look at that. So about 3/4 of you are using Purview. So let's go and G, talk about Purview.
Yep. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Niraj. We wanted to start off by saying Purview, obviously, so for the folks that have answered yes to the poll, they're using Purview. You've probably already done, a level of research to select that product or be more interested in it. But holistically, what we want to cover today is, all the things that Purview can do, because it's a very wide application. It covers a lot of ground, starting with information protection, where we can discover, classify, and protect sensitive data. Matt, can we advance the slide, please?
Sorry, G, are you getting the slide?
Yeah, can we go back to the previous slide, please?
Yeah, I don't know if it built out properly for on your side. So let me just back it up.
Yeah, so we talked about the information protection. There's also the data loss prevention, which is covering the identification, monitoring, and automatically protecting the content across various different workloads. E-discovery, being able to identify and deliver electronic information that can be used as evidence in legal cases and putting legal holds on things. Insider risk management to identify, triage, and act on potentially risky activity within the organization itself. Information barriers, the compliance solution basically allows you to restrict two-way communication and collaboration between groups, within Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive. And then lastly, the information governance, which is the unified data governance service, which is to manage all of your content within on-prem, multi-cloud, and SaaS solutions. Okay. And today we're going to spend time on the information protection side. We have webinars set up to cover the other portions of Purview in subsequent webinars. So please do look for those and register for those. We'll have a slide on that towards the end to talk about the dates and timings for those webinars as well. Okay. So one of the first questions that we get, previous slide, please, Matt. One of the first questions that we get when we talk about how to implement information protection is really, what is the strategy, right? The strategy is to discover, classify, protect, and monitor all of our data and across different applications, different devices, cloud services, and on-premise repositories. Next slide, please. Within Discovery, we have the ability to look at all the different types of repositories that might host data, whether it's Exchange, SharePoint, Teams, different endpoints, people's desktop computers, OneDrive. And using the Purview scanner, we can have all of that data be built up, and we can create a map of that using tools like sensitive info types, trainable classifiers, exact data match, and many others. Sensitive info types specifically and trainable classifiers are really useful tools, which are, pattern-based classifiers that detect information like social security numbers, credit cards, bank account numbers, and many more. And out of the box, Microsoft provides, over 300 info types that can be utilized, from day one without much configuration. Things like trainable classifiers, being able to create maps of sensitive content based on existing sensitive content, you're being able to train a model to look for those similar documents and tag those and flag those accordingly. Next slide, Matt. Classification is the next step. So once we know what data exists, we can see the results of the sensitive info types and the trainable classifiers and begin to apply labels, data classification labels, to really classify where and how much data is sensitive and what needs protection and to what level. Okay, so that classification step can be done within Purview itself holistically. The next step is to protect all of the data that we've classified. Depending on the level of classification that we have applied, some data may need to be encrypted, some data does not need to be encrypted. So using tools like sensitivity labels, we can choose what level of protection we want to apply. Do we want to have internal only protection? Do we want to allow external users to be able to access content? And these labels can be applied using different tools like Office on the web, Office desktop applications, the unified labeling clients, and even the MIP SDK for custom applications that could be, built using that SDK. And lastly, we want to monitor all of the work that we've done to be able to see whether the classifications that we've done, whether the protection that we've done are actually being effective. So using the tools like eDiscovery, DLP policy alerts, insider risk management, activity explorer, and the content search, all of that activity can be monitored to prevent risks in the future. Okay, measuring and monitoring. Slide, please. NetWoven likes to provide a holistic view of all of this content. We have the ability to create dashboards that lay out key metrics about all of the data that we have classified, all of the data we have protected. Certain graphs that we see on that first one, a rolling 12-month of how much data is being protected, how much data is essentially the amount of data is growing and it's remaining protected, which is a great sign for adoption as well, meaning that end users are actually using the tools that have been deployed within Microsoft Purview, and all of the data that's being generated is and continue to be protected. We're not seeing a decline in protection.
Yeah, and if I could just add here one more item, Purview has a lot of reporting capabilities that are there that can be utilized. And then on top of that, it has the capability to integrate data from multiple sources because it has all the APIs and other things. So what we typically do with customers is not only enable the Purview reports, but also build some of these advanced reports that take data from different sources to really show you an overall journey. So you've got both the capabilities with Purview.
All right, so adoption is probably the most critical to success of your data security journey. We've seen this time and time again in so many customers that have even implemented strategies, but the result of poor adoption means that those strategies are not being used. So all that time and money being wasted because we didn't have a good enough adoption strategy. So it's really important to build out a good foundation using things like champion programs, ample communication, ample training, and allowing governance and support to exist and support the actual end users that are being asked to use the tools that we're setting up here. Champion programs, especially, we've seen a lot of success with. Typically, end users are very, very tied to their teams and their management and their colleagues. So if they have confidence in somebody that they trust, then they have confidence in the tools that they're using as well. So rather than a top-down approach of enforcing the usage of tools, it's organically and natively grown within them because they see their peers and colleagues using the same tools and the tools being promoted.
Yeah, and just to add to what G mentioned, there's a number. This is fundamentally very important to your data security and governance execution. We've seen many implementations where people have done the technical part, but projects really lag behind on adoption and change management. I think putting that in place as you evolve your data security and governance strategy is critical. Champions, as G mentioned, champions are finding people within your organization who can really champion your data security cause, right? Communication, making sure that there's ongoing communication that happens about your program while it's being executed, after it's being executed. Training is around making sure that you've got different forms of training. There's online training, there's brown bag training sessions, and you've got different mediums and methods for that. Governance is making sure that you've got people, process, and you've got policies, all three together, and of course technology, all four together, to be able to execute on your governance. And then support. This often gets overlooked by organizations, and making sure that a help desk is fully prepared. When you tighten up security, users are going to feel a little bit of pain. And when they feel the pain, they're going to want to reach out to somebody. And though somebody typically is your data czar and his or her team, or that support team is the help desk support. So making sure that both of these sides are fully covered is extremely important, as the organization will experience a bit of a pain as they go through this journey. But once it's all smoothed out, once these things are ready, it will become part of their natural cycle and system, and they can start to really utilize the capabilities and feel the benefits.
Yeah, Neeraj, I'd like to highlight just that training portion. It's becoming such an important piece of any adoption foundation nowadays. We have generational differences between some of our older workforce and younger workforce, and getting the right type of training, whether it's self-paced or drop-in to just short videos out there, is so crucial to any project.
We've had several situations where because Purview is available with your licensing, that some technical person just kind of starts to play with it, and then suddenly Purview kind of grows like wildfire, and then we get some calls saying, hey, we've kind of lost control of how to basically do an enterprise rollout. We're in this proof of concept mode or a limited pilot production mode. So, one of the things that we end up doing is working with them to make sure that we take it from whatever their POC situation is or pilot situation is, and to do a full enterprise rollout. I mean, we've worked with thousands and thousands of customers in this area, so it can really help with the proper rollout of Purview.
Great.
Yeah, and the next slide we show an example of a data security and governance portal, which is one of the tools that we've been using in pretty much all of our implementations for Microsoft Purview for end users. A self-help area where they don't have to reach out to anyone specifically. They have all of their answers that they need here, and if they don't, obviously the help desk is there to provide support. But we want to be able to empower the end user to learn on their own if they don't have enough knowledge already. So this is in the form of FAQs, best known methods of how to do various activities and stay secure, whether it's external sharing, whether it's providing access to SharePoint Online content, Short videos are very helpful, especially when there's tools that have lots of nitty-gritty controls. So, being able to talk through those is very helpful, instead of having to, only read or rely on, paragraphs of information. So something like this is a no-brainer, right? There's no reason not to have this, because it's a tool that's going to continue to grow, and you can rely on this not just for end users. We've seen a lot of help desk organizations also utilizing a tool like this, where there's a different side, right? There's an end user facing, and there's help desk facing content.
And just to add to this, one of the questions we often get asked is that, hey, my data landscape is really diverse. I've got Microsoft, I've got a bit of Box, I've got a bit of Google, I've got on-prem repositories, I've got MongoDB, I have Oracle database, I have SQL Server, and it is, chances are that your data estate may be as diverse as well. Well, sometimes it could be that there is just one tool will satisfy everything, and something like a Purview will satisfy most use cases. But there may be edge conditions, where there are some repositories where Purview may not have something. So typically, what we do is we reach out to third-party connectors. I mean, Purview has a large partner base. So, for example, when we were working with one customer, they had AutoCAD files, and Purview didn't have an AutoCAD connector. So we reached out to a partner that integrated with Purview, and we were able to use that AutoCAD connector. So you'll run into those situations. The typical guidance that we provide to customers is, first look at what Purview has. Then second, look at, is there a partner out there that adds more capabilities to Purview? And then the last but not is really, do you really have to do custom work, or do you have to look at another tool for that, said that single use case? So that's sort of the guidance that we provide to customer. Now, all that information should be available on your data security and governance portal, so that as different organizations, whether it could be your engineering organization, could be a supply chain organization, if they're looking through this, they have answers to these questions on the portal itself, in addition to end user training.
Great. And I think that's a good time for our last poll, which is rate your organization's end user adoption of data security. Great. So we're averaging about 1.5 stars. Oh, it's jumping up 2 stars. I think in this one it's just so hard, it's all about that user adoption. These can be complex scenarios to explain to end users. Give it just 10 more seconds here. See if somebody else wants to jump in on the poll. All right, let's wrap that one up.
So wanted to touch a bit on a security roadmap here with you, right? As you know, Microsoft has a number of products, and there are multiple ways to tackle the data security problem. The most foolproof, secure way is to go through a security journey, a modernization journey, excuse me. And that starts with making sure your identity systems are in place with Azure AD, Entra, getting your devices in place, making sure your devices are all in proper order, getting to look at Purview to do, say, information protection and working through your DLP, and then getting through the Sentinel, which is your say SOC tool. And finally, once you're all of this, you get into a managed services state and being able to have a managed services. Now, by having this journey doesn't mean that you have to follow this, or it has to be done sequentially. The idea is really to take these, and then you can say, hey, look, in the first phase, I want to make sure that my identity is completely in place. I want to do a little bit with device. I want to do a little bit with Purview. and then I want to do nothing with Sentinel in the first phase. In the second phase, you might say, I want to complete my identity. I want to complete my Intune related work devices. I want to really mature my Purview, and then I want to start putting Sentinel in place. Or you might say that, no, I think we're in good shape. Other things are progressing well. I just want to go directly into Purview and get that implemented. So there are different ways to take your security journey. Obviously, Microsoft is one of the fewer companies that provides almost everything in the security journey, and it's sort of like not many people know it, and chances are that you probably have the licenses for a lot of these things already, if not all the advanced licenses, at least the basic licenses. So I would encourage you to look at your your licensing, look at where you are, look at where you are in your security modernization journey, and look at where you are in your data security and governance journey, and kind of follow along that. And we certainly can help, and we work with a lot of organizations in their security journey.
Great. Thank you, Niraj. Just real quick, please continue to join these webinars. I mentioned that this is the first of 6. We also offer free workshops in this area. So please reach out, and we're happy to meet and talk through some of your business requirements. And before we jump into the Q&A, I wanted to give just the time to David from Microsoft if he had any closing thoughts, and then we can jump into Q&A. David, any thoughts?
No, thanks, Matt. I'm all set on our side. I just want to again say thank you to everyone joined, and thank you for the NetWoven team. And we look forward to working with you guys and supporting you guys from your security journey.
Great. Thanks, David. All right, now on to our Q&A. So I'll start to mention some of these. We'll go reverse chronological order. So the first question about, is it possible to get a copy of the deck? I believe the marketing team is going to send out this webinar recording. So yeah, certainly respond to that if that's not what you need. The next one, can eDiscovery only cover Office documents, or is it possible to cover data stored in other systems and databases? So Manish from our team just mentioned that you can use eDiscovery search for the Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, M365 stuff. I don't know if Niraj or G, if you have any other thoughts from an eDiscovery, any add-ins or partners you've used in the past to extend the eDiscovery tool into other systems.
Yeah, I'll just add to it that there's a whole bunch of connector community out there, so we'll have to look at it case by case basis on what those repositories are, and then see what can be extended.
Cool, thanks. The next one was around the typical time frame from going 0 to 100 fully adopted of this framework. So Manish, you had mentioned in chat it takes anywhere 3 to 6 months, but again, adoption is always ongoing. This is only initial adoption. As this product evolves, there's going to be more features. Microsoft is always in the bleeding edge. Right now it might not cover certain use cases. In the future it might. And so we find that it's not a set it and forget it. But if you're asking just that initial adoption, 3 to 6 months sounds about right. And then what repositories can Purview connect to natively? Salesforce, SAP. I don't know, G or Niraj, if you've got some thoughts on, if you know the answer on that one.
I know it can connect with Salesforce. I need to check on SAP.
Okay, so certainly maybe we'll reach back out once we have that answer.
Yeah.
And then one just came in that the AIP client is being sunset. Do we know the timeline of that and what's replacing it? G,
So
any
the
thoughts?
AIP client, I mean, Microsoft has already moved to the, actually, let me step back.
So
I think you want to move to the built-in client as soon as possible. Okay, and while I'm not sure about what the exact sunset date is, but
it's
there was a time when there was a feature parity gap between the built-in client and the the downloadable client. But now there's feature parity now. You should move to the built-in client in Office, and for that you have to make sure that you also have the proper Office Office I'm forgetting the name, but Office downloads, if you will. You're on a continuous stream so that your Office is updated automatically. So you kind of have to do both of those together to be able to make sure that you're on the right path. So G, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I was gonna say the official sunset date is April 11th next year. So by then, basically all of the features that, or any features that are being tracked to move over into the built-in labeling, should be done by then. And after that, it will be in maintenance mode. Actually, it'll be completely sunset. It's been in maintenance mode, so no new features there. But after April 11th, it'll be built-in only, and you can continue to use the Classify and Protect desktop application, but the add-in for Office will no longer be available.
Great. All right. I believe that concludes all the questions that we had in the chat. So I want to thank everybody for attending. Again, big thank you. And hopefully we'll see you all later in these sessions. The next session is in December. If you don't have that on your calendar, please reach out. We'll send you the invite again. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care.